my breast with a turkey, my favorite mark.
Everybody can start taking a seat, that'd be great.
All of those really amazing reports on Ricky.
We're going to get started. We've got a lot to cover today at this year's Environmental Summit. So as many of you know, as we gather every year in advance of the state legislative session, the goal is really to review the key environmental issues that we anticipate will be on the legislative agenda at the state capitol this year. So there's no hiding from the fact that our federal government is attempting to roll back decades of environmental protections that include sweeping reforms to weaken or eliminate the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, to open up the Arctic and our oceans with unchecked oil drilling, and to block efforts by our own state to produce clean solar and wind energy. But you know all that. Today is about what we and our elected leaders can do as a state to protect our environment, to make progress in key areas of land, water, climate protection, clean energy, waste reduction, and a lot more that you're going to hear about today. The people in this room, you all, are on the front lines. You are the ones who are moving the dial on the environment in Connecticut. It's really time now, this is a moment, to take really strong, clear positions, defensible positions, and to make sure that our legislative leaders and our elected leaders are determined to be effective environmental champions. They need to know that for important bills, when they push forward important legislation, we're going to be there to rally support and make sure that we have their back if they're taking the lead on issues that we care about. We have to show up and support and talk. We should also no longer accommodate people who want to roll back our progress. Now is the time to really stand up and fight and push back. We've got good things that we can fight for this year that you'll hear about. So today we really hope that you'll learn about a range of legislative opportunities that are on the table this year, and take note of what our speakers are saying that we can do next to support these efforts. And then get ready to do more than you've ever done before. You do a lot, but be prepared. It's going to be a tight, short session, and we really need to make some noise to make sure that we cut through the fray and make the positions that we want known. And with that, and also throughout the day there's going to be opportunities to ask questions through your phones by logging into the Sligo program, and you'll get your questions. We encourage you.
Concession to age. Well, good morning, and thank you very much for coming to our 26th Annual Environmental Summit. You know what? I'm hoping this works. Can you hear me now? Okay. All right. We are so pleased to welcome you to this year's sold-out event. I want to make a special note to thank you all here in this auditorium and those joining us online. Your expertise and leadership on the issues that we are highlighting today is what makes this summit possible. So again, thank you. Without you, this would not be possible. To our financial sponsors, particularly our gold sponsor, the Hampshire Foundation.
Thank you, Joe. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I'm going to get this mic right. Let me first start by saying that it's hard to believe, but I have begun my 8th year as Attorney General. It is my 20th year in elective office at the state level. I was a state legislator for 12 years, as many of you know. And during my entire 20-year service, Lori Brown has always been our lodestar for conservation here in this state. So let's give Lori a round of applause. But of course, you just celebrated your 25th birthday, so. So what do you want to talk about? There's so much to talk about. I was given 10 minutes. But let me just say, of course, you know what's happening, right? This is an unprecedented attack right now waged by the president and the federal government on the American people, and an unprecedented attack on our climate, our environment, our natural resources. And yes, it really is that bad. And you just have to open the paper, any paper, frankly, and you can see the attack on power, on wind power, the attack on the endangerment finding, the dismantling of the Environmental Protection Agency, which began in Trump 1 and which I fought 7 years ago in Trump 1, and we are continuing to fight. The Chevron doctrine, the reversing of the Chevron doctrine for you lawyers did great damage to our environmental regulatory infrastructure in this country. And so, given that it is so bad, and it really is so bad at times, what do? Well, I was reminded of something a wise man once told me. His name is Joe McGee. In 2013, I lost a campaign for mayor of Stamford that I had no business losing. I lost by less than 200 votes. And at that time, I was firmly on my back. I thought that I would never run for another elected office. I was in a real funk for a long time. And I went to see my friend Joe. And Joe said, you know what, William? Politics is all about how you get up off the canvas. And the key is to win more than you lose. We have to get up off the canvas right now and win more than we lose. We have to fight back as a coalition, as a team of advocates. We have to take the fight to the president and Donald Trump and his administration and fight for our environment, our natural resources, and our future. Are you with me in this fight? What that means is when Donald Trump issues an executive order, an unlawful executive order, to stop work on Revolution Wind, we have to get in the fight. So the first time we went in, we sued, we stopped him, and the workers went back on the job. And then right before Christmas, after he tried to take food stamps away from people, right before Christmas, he tried to stop work on Revolution Wind. Again, we went back into court and we beat him, and those workers are back on the job, and we will have wind power from Revolution Wind in February. We were on our backs, and we got up off the canvas, right? With respect to the endangerment finding, they're not just content with dismantling the EPA, but dismantling the very regulatory finding that enables us as a people, as a country, to protect our climate. The Supreme Court in Massachusetts versus EPA, right, said that the federal government, that we together can regulate greenhouse gases to protect our climate and to protect our communities and protect our people. We are on our back because Lee Zeldin has done so much damage, but we are getting up and we are fighting and we are suing and we are going to protect the endangerment finding. With respect to the climate, very quickly, when I became Attorney General 7 years ago, I said, we need to use the power and authority of this office to protect our climate. I want a climate case. And the head of our environment section, Matt Levine, some of you know Matt, I said, Matt, I want to take action to protect the climate. And he looked at me and he's like, okay, that's a big job. And he comes back to me 2 years later and he says, I've got it, boss, we have a case, we're gonna bring a case against ExxonMobil. And I said, great, tell me about the case. And he said, well, ExxonMobil developed climate science over the last 7 years. They're the ones, their scientists developed the science that taught us, my generation, about greenhouse gases, right? About global warming, which is what we called it back in the day. And it was ExxonMobil that understood the impact of fossil fuels, not just in the climate, but rising sea levels, and that they had to change the height of their drilling platforms to accommodate for the changing climate. And then it was ExxonMobil that turned its back in the late 70s and early 80s on its own science, and then began to lie to us about climate change. See, the thing is, you can't lie to people when you sell goods and services. That's bedrock consumer protection law. So I've sued ExxonMobil for lying to us about the climate. The one funny thing is, so Matt says to me, all right, we're gonna bring this case, it's gonna be great, we're gonna tell the story back to the 1950s. And I said, hold on a second, Matt, how can we do that? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, you can't go all the way back to the 1950s, isn't there a statute of limitations? And he said, Mr. Attorney General, in Connecticut, there's no statute of limitations against the state. Time doesn't run against the king in Connecticut. So it's good to be the king. So that case has withstood a number of challenges by ExxonMobil. We are winning that case and we intend to take it all the way. And then finally on PFAS, this is incredibly important, and it impacts all of us in our clean water, the water that we drink, the water that nourishes and sustains us, that water right there in that picture. And we are leading a national coalition. There are multiple suits in South Carolina and across the country. We have sued all the big producers of PFAS and PFAS and PFOA, and we are holding them accountable for the damage that they're doing to our natural resources. So that's the big picture. The message I wanted to bring here today is this fight, our fight, needs you here at home. And yes, it's easy to get, I'll use the word distracted by all the big fights, the endangerment finding, right? Climate change writ large. And people ask me, well, what should we do in these moments? How should we fight? And the first thing I say to people is, number one, help somebody, help a neighbor, help a friend, help your local immigrants. But also address what's in front of you, okay? I hesitated to use the word distraction, because it's not a distraction to fight the big battles. We have to fight them. But keep your eye on the ball with what's in front of you, like Revolution Wind. That's right in front of us. Speak out about the need for 350,000 homes to receive wind power. Speak out on the need for more generation in this state. Talk about and advocate for the remediation of English Station in New Haven and the contaminated ground there in New Haven. Put pressure with me on United Illuminating to pay to take that building down and remediate that site. That's their responsibility. They made that commitment, and they should make good on it. Focus on our water, the discharges, right, on the Massachusetts border into our waterways, and the fact that that is largely addressed by the EPA and the federal government. Get in that fight. Get in the fight about the sale of Aquarium. Why is that important? It's not just about utilities, it's not just about rates. At some point, somebody will have to remediate the PFAS in that water served by Aquarium, RWA, or somebody else. That's why it's so important that you get in that fight and make sure that whoever takes over that water utility will have the resources and that we can pay as ratepayers to address the PFAS crisis. That is an estuary, I assume, I'm not sure where it is. Maybe Brantford, coastline, something like that. And there should be herring running through those estuaries. But our herring population has been decimated by the climate, by overfishing. There should be striped bass chasing those herring. But our striped bass population has been decimated. They should be swimming among horseshoe crabs in the Sound, and that population has been decimated. And if they survive and they end up in an estuary like that or in the Housatonic River, they are constantly attacked by poachers and lawlessness. This is right in front of us. There's no sound, there's no healthy sound, there's no healthy water supply without a healthy sound. Focus on what's in front of us and fight for the sound and the wildlife and the ecology in one of our most important waterways and watercourses. Focus on what's in front of you. This session, there are big fights, some of which are big and symbolic, and those are important, yes. But let's focus on concrete action items to protect our natural resources and our environment. Let me close with this thought. The most often I hear from people right now over the last year, although this fight's been going on for 7 years, people come up to me and they're exasperated, they're frustrated, they're upset. And they say, I don't recognize my country anymore. I don't know what to do with all this nervous energy, and I'm really afraid for our country. And I stop them and I just say firmly for a second, and just get them to focus. I hear you. I'm scared too at times. How can you not be with the murder of Renee Good and the things that we see across this country? How can you not be scared? And though at times I am scared, I am not afraid. And that is really important. I am not afraid to get up off the canvas and fight. I am not afraid because there are people in cancer clusters across this country who really have something to be afraid of because of the damage that's been done to the water they drink or the air that they breathe. I am not afraid because in Arizona and in other parts of the country, and yes, here in Connecticut, extreme weather threatens people and lives, extreme temperatures. They've got something to be afraid of. I am not afraid because I'm standing here in the former G-Fox. This is where I came as a kid to see Santa Claus, I think on this floor. And my parents and grandparents ran for their lives. From the Japanese, from the communists, from homelessness, from hunger, from poverty. And they found their way, of all places, to Hartford, Connecticut and G-Fox. They had everything to be afraid of. We have nothing to be afraid of, and we have an obligation to stand up, each and every one of us, and stare him in the eye and say, we are not afraid of you. Let's get out there and fight.
Before we begin the next session, I want to give you a context. In this gubernatorial race, the issue of affordability is going to be front and center. We saw that in the New Jersey race for governor, in the Virginia race for governor. And the issue of affordability is going to be focused on energy. And what can we do about the cost of energy? And there's kind of a narrative that the expansion of natural gas will lower the cost of your residential heating and electricity bills, right? That's the bridge solution, expand natural gas. So we wanted to look at that. We wanted to understand how did Connecticut's energy system develop? What are the implications of energy policy for Connecticut, and particularly in our role in a regional energy system? i.e., is it a good deal for Connecticut or a bad deal? And we found some very interesting information, which Connie Ukaitis, who's our deputy director here at the League, will present to you in a study that we're doing. And it's a two-part study. The first part is, how does our energy system work? How does our energy system work in a regional New England system? And then what are the alternatives to natural gas expansion? i.e., is natural gas the best expansion of natural gas, the best solution for affordability for Connecticut? And we're not so sure about that. We think there's a big story to tell about the impact of natural gas and electricity development in Connecticut. So Connor, come on up. He's a man of the hour. He's telling you the story.
Good morning, everyone. So as Joe said, we are still in the process of working on this study, so it is not ready yet. However, we wanted to just kind of give a bit of a narrative as to where we are and how we got here. So first of all, I'm the deputy director. I've been here for, will be 7 years this year. 6 years ago, we were sitting in the office and we were all, as staff, picking issues that we were very passionate about, thanks to Lori. I chose energy, clean energy. And at the time, offshore wind was, booming, and I'm like, oh, I really want to get into this. Little did I know energy would be the top most divisive issue in the state right now. And there's been a lot to learn. So, over the last decade, Connecticut has quietly become the powerhouse of New England's electric grid. Today, our state produces roughly 45% of all the electricity generated in the region, far more than any other New England state. Now, this did not happen by accident. This is the direct result of a policy choice to dramatically expand a natural gas supply, with the promise that doing so would lower energy costs, create jobs, make our economy more competitive, and protect the environment. While that expansion succeeded in increasing supply, the outcomes Connecticut was promised never fully materialized. Hello? Oh, there we go. The surge in natural gas flowing into the state, more than a 50% increase, had an unintended consequence. It drove the construction of large-scale power generation facilities. As a result, electricity generation in Connecticut rose by nearly 50% over 2 decades. But rather than being used here, much of the power now flows out of the state. Between 2001 and 2024, electricity exports increased 17-fold, turning Connecticut into a net exporter of energy for the region. In effect, we have built a system designed to serve New England, not just Connecticut. What is striking is that this massive increase in power generation has not translated into economic growth for the state. Connecticut's employment has never recovered from the pre-recession levels, and we rank last in the nation for payroll growth. There is little evidence that hosting so much generation capacity has made our businesses more competitive or spurred lasting job creation. Meanwhile, states like Massachusetts, and I'm a diehard Red Sox fan, this is not to knock Massachusetts, produce relatively little power themselves and import much of what they need without bearing the same costs. These costs show up most clearly on Connecticut residents' electric bills. Our residential electric rates are among the highest in the country and continue to climb, reaching over 30 cents per kilowatt hour by 2026. While natural gas prices do fluctuate, fuel costs are no longer the primary driver of these high bills. Instead, delivery charges covering transmission and distribution now make up nearly 2/3 of the typical bill. These delivery costs have nearly doubled over the past 15 years. Why? Because building and maintaining a grid capable of supporting massive power generation requires enormous infrastructure investment. We have paid heavily for new distribution systems within the state, while also sharing regional transmission costs around New England. Billions have been invested to move electricity from where it is generated to where it is consumed, often not within Connecticut. In short, we as ratepayers in Connecticut are financing a grid built to export power largely to other states. Even with all this new capacity, the system remains vulnerable. Connecticut lacks natural gas storage and large-scale battery storage, leaving the grid stressed during winter cold snaps, when heating demand competes with power generation. On the coldest days, plants still switch to dirtier fuels like diesel, and high-priced peaker plants are brought online. This exposes a key flaw in the original policy, expanding gas supply without planning for system dynamics, resilience, or long-term clean alternatives. The environmental and public health consequences of this arrangement are unavoidable for Connecticut. Our residents bear the pollution impacts from power plants located in our most densely populated areas, and coupled with, obviously the traffic congestion along 95, we do have some of the worst pollution in the region. While energy consumption within the state has actually declined since 2007, emissions associated with exported electricity continue to affect our communities. The greenhouse gas emissions, air pollution, and related health risks stay here, even though much of the electricity does not. This leaves us with a fundamental imbalance. Connecticut hosts the generation, pays for the infrastructure, and absorbs the environmental and health impacts, while much of the benefits flow elsewhere. At the same time, we have not seen the promised economic returns that were used to justify the expansion of natural gas in the first place. In short, it appears natural gas is a bad deal for Connecticut. Understanding, now this may not be news to everyone, new information to everyone, but as we enter this debate, especially in an election year and in a critical legislative session, it's important that people are reminded of where we are. Understanding how we got here is critical as we debate what comes next. History shows that simply increasing supply, especially fossil fuel supply, does not guarantee affordability, reliability, or prosperity. Future energy policy must be more intentional. It must align generation with local benefit, prioritize clean energy and storage, reduce dependency on costly gas-driven infrastructure, and center public health and equity. The lesson is clear. If Connecticut is going to power the region, our residents must finally see the benefits and not just be burdened with the costs. The ISO New England grid was designed originally to ensure that New England states benefit equitably. Given the amount of energy that Connecticut produces and exports, coupled with the high costs on ratepayers and adverse health impacts on our residents, especially in lower income communities, we must ask ourselves, is Connecticut getting our fair share? We look forward to sharing more detail with you all in the weeks to come as the legislative session ramps up, but it's just questions to think about as we enter the day and the next couple months. So now I would like to introduce our clean energy panel. And I want to thank everyone on this panel because, like I said, I'm 6 years into becoming an energy person here at the League. I get the privilege of learning from all of these folks every day and plenty more who are in this room. But I would like to introduce our moderator today, John Moritz, who covers energy and environment for the Connecticut Mirror. Prior to joining the CT Mirror, he was a statewide reporter for the Hearst Connecticut Media Group. His in-depth reporting at the Mirror is a staple for all of us seeking accurate and substantive information on key issues we are all concerned about today. And the panelists that he will be moderating include Mike Trahan, who's the founder of the Connecticut Solar and Storage Association, the primary business group presenting the legislative and regulatory interests of home installers, commercial developers, finance companies, and equipment suppliers operating in Connecticut. We also have Peter Millman, who's the Vice President for PACE, which is the People's Action for Clean Energy, and is a leading number of PACE's initiatives, including community choice aggregation and network geothermal. He has been published in the Green Energy News since 2015. We also have Charles Rothenberger. He's the in-house climate and energy attorney for Save the Sound, with 15 years of experience working on the environmental, energy, and land issues. Charles focuses on climate, energy policy, and legislation to ensure clean air and a robust green economy for Connecticut. We also are joined by Ricardo Jordan. He's the manager for energy efficiency at Eversource, responsible for Connecticut's statewide commercial and industrial energy efficiency programs. And then finally, we have Bernie Pelletier, who serves on Connecticut's Energy Efficiency Board and is a member of the Connecticut Energy Network Steering Committee. So I'll invite all of you to come on up here, and we look forward to a robust conversation on clean energy.
All right, hello everyone. As Connor said, I'm John Moritz. I'm joined by our panelists who you just met. We're going to start, I'm going to give each of the panelists 5 minutes to introduce themselves and give a short presentation on the topics they want to cover. After that, we're going to jump into about a 20-minute Q&A, and you can see, I think there's a QR code up here where you can submit any questions, and I'll be able to see them and ask any of the panelists. So, shall we start over here with Charles, and we'll go to the left. Oh, sorry.
John, thanks. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be back in the G. Fox building. I think the last time I was here, you know that bratty kid who gets on the elevator with you and he punches all the keys and looks like a Christmas tree? That was me and my 10-year-old friends back about 50 years ago in this building, before we got thrown out in the street by the guards. I got on the highway this morning, and I was thinking about what I was going to say, and it was feeling a little dour, and speeding past me within the speed limit was a vehicle from Earthlike Technologies, which is one of Connecticut's esteemed solar installers, going the speed limit. The founder of the company is with us today, so I'm very glad to hear that. So that picked me up a little bit. So I was asked if I would kind of give a state of solar in Connecticut, and dispel a misconception that may have taken root. So just so everyone knows, this past year in 2025, 15,000 Connecticut homeowners put solar on the rooftop, which is a good number. That number goes up by 1,000 or 2 or down by 1,000 or 2 every year, depending on market conditions. So it was a good year for homeowners. Everyone was trying to get in before the end of the year because the federal tax credit, the 30% federal tax credit, expired at the end of this year. So what does life look like if you want to put solar on your rooftop in 2026? Well, if you want to own your system, or if you want to take a loan out on your system, the federal tax credit does not apply to you. Which is not to say that you can't get a system on your rooftop. There are contractors in Connecticut in the last quarter that were selling into this year systems for people who did not make the tax credit deadline. People want to put systems on the roof, they want to own it outright, and contractors are doing that. They found a way to make it sense, make it pencil out for some homeowners. So that option is available to you. If you want to lease your system, you don't get the investment tax credit, but there is a second, separate federal tax credit that is available to lease companies, so that if you want to put a leased system on your rooftop, that option is available to you. That second credit has about as much value as the original tax credit that just expired. So life goes on for residential homeowners if you want to lease your system, or if you have the resources to own it. So that story is good. On the commercial side, you need to move quickly. What we had done in the last several years is 2 solicitations, one in February, one in August. These are reverse auctions, so if you would work with a contractor, they would enter a bid to see if they would win a contract with utility for your project. Since the investment tax credit runs out also for commercial systems, so you need to get that system started by July, it doesn't make sense to hold the solicitation in August. So that February and August solicitation are all being packed into the February solicitation. So if you've got a commercial project in mind, you got to move fast. The system needs to be started by July, and then you get a couple of years to finish it. If you miss that July deadline, there's some way that you can kind of wiggle your way forward. But my suggestion would be to get on, you can go to our website, find a bunch of really good commercial contractors that are all familiar with the NRES process, and we'll take care of you there. As for the state of solar in Connecticut, it's mixed. It really is. It's very difficult to say whether solar is on the rise or whether we're heading south, and I'll give you a couple examples of that. A legislative committee in Hartford last April heard testimony from a dozen residential installers on a bill in the Finance Committee, House Bill 1560. And those 12 home solar installers told those 50-something legislators on the Finance Committee, don't pass this bill. You're going to wreck solar. You're going to devalue net metering to the point where consumers wouldn't want to buy it anymore. A couple of days later, that bill passed the Finance Committee by a vote of 45-6. There were 16 Republicans and 29 Democrats all voted for that bill. To me, it was the worst day for solar in a decade, not because the bill would eventually move forward, but it provided momentum for those who thought that the cost of solar exceeded the benefits, which is a myth too, which we've been trying to dispel, and I'll talk about that later in our breakout session. But in a moment of legislative sobriety, the good chairs of the Energy Committee wrestled that bill away from the Finance Committee and retooled it. They discarded the elements that would harm net metering and passed the bill out of committee that went to the House and Senate and eventually became law by unanimous votes, nearly unanimous votes in the House and Senate. There were some brave members of the Finance Committee who raised their hand and voted no. And those legislators deserve recognition. I'm not sure if some of them are here, but Senator Tony Wong from Fairfield, Representative Mary Wyszynski from Wallingford, Representative Steve Winter from New Haven, Representative Jim Sanchez from Hartford, Representative Hilda Santiago from Meriden. All of them, and Josh Elliott from Hamden, all those 6 legislators got up and said, no, I'm not voting for this, even if it means I get myself in hot water with the House Chairman of the committee. So if any of those legislators represent you in the House or the Senate, and you see them, or make an effort to tell them you really thank them for really going beyond the line of expectation and doing something really good. So there was also a couple of brand names in the solar industry. Some of you are familiar with them. Sonova, which is a finance company.
Can we just move
Oh,
on?
my 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Sure. Happy to talk to you later. Thanks for your attention.
Well, I got some questions also. We'll get back to you.
I'll be here.
Is it Charles next?
Charles?
Okay. All right.
We will go with the flow. So, thank you. You heard a little bit about offshore wind and the challenges that we're facing from Attorney General Tom, and kudos to him for the excellent job that his office is doing in defending our projects. This slide is really just meant to represent a couple things. On the right hand, you see the promise and the potential of offshore wind. Those colored blocks represent the offshore wind lease areas, which the United States started auctioning off for potential wind development beginning in 2009. Right now, we are seeing the first few of these projects come online. Vineyard Wind 1 in Massachusetts, which is the light green blob up at the top, started generating a portion of its capacity last year. South Fork Wind, which is the light blue blob, I think just up at the top tip there, started generating its capacity into New York. And here in Connecticut, our one pending large-scale offshore wind development, Revolution Wind, is the large red area at the top. And after a few fits and starts, that 704 megawatt project will start delivering power, as you heard, in February to Massachusetts and Connecticut. So we are facing some severe headwinds, though, no pun intended. If you look at the timeline on the right, which really represents some of the challenges we're facing, prior to the Biden administration taking office, 2021, even though we had been leasing these outer continental shelf areas, and all these projects are anywhere from 12 to 20 miles off the coast, the prior administration, Trump 1, had really been slow walking the application process. So when the Biden administration came in, first thing they did, establish a national goal, 30 gigawatts by 2030 of offshore wind. And that would put us right in league with where Europe is. Both Europe and China each have about 30 megawatts of, or gigawatts of offshore wind developed. However, first thing the Trump administration did, as we all know, January 20th, 2025, issued an executive order suspending any further permitting activity for these projects. So it didn't impact the projects that had completed their permitting, including Revolution Wind, including Empire Wind in New York, but basically stopped everything dead in its tracks for any further permitting of projects. And in April, ironically, the federal government releases a report stating all of the significant benefits that offshore wind presents for the economy, for clean energy, while, and again, posing minimal risks to marine wildlife. So despite this, despite the successes they've had in Europe, despite the federal government's own assessment, and despite a very rigorous multi-year permitting process for these projects, the Trump administration has begun a series of targeted attacks against offshore wind. And I won't read all of those, you can sort of see the timeline there. What I hope you take away from that timeline is, as Attorney General Tom said, we are winning these fights. Time and time again, whether it's issuing a stop work order for particular projects, the federal courts have said, you have no basis, you have no justification to do this. Whether it's the executive order pausing permitting, federal courts have said, well, that's blatantly illegal and a violation of the Administrative Procedures Act. You don't have the unilateral authority to do that. So we are winning in the courts. Unfortunately, the damage is being done. We are really seeing a downward trend in the amount of capacity that's likely to come online over the next 10 years. In fact, the 5 currently under construction offshore wind projects that Trump paused before Christmas, and the federal courts are now in series opening up again. It's about 6 gigawatts, and that's going to be about the maximum capacity we can expect, down from 40 megawatts, which was anticipated. So we're losing a tremendous amount of capacity. I think the reason that we're seeing such an incredible pushback against offshore wind is for the simple reason that people know it works. And you only have to look at Texas, which gets nearly a quarter of its electricity from wind power, ground zero for natural gas. Natural gas was a cheaper alternative. They'd be all in, but they're not. So I urge people to just look at the facts, look at who's using energy where, and again, lend your voices to combat misinformation and to support the development of these critical resources.
Thanks, Charles. We're going to go to Peter next.
Good morning. We have an opportunity here in Connecticut to take a big step away from how we currently heat buildings, which is mostly by burning a lot of gas and oil. With the help of thermal energy networks, we can make this transition at the neighborhood scale, and the benefits will be huge. For one thing, there'll be far less greenhouse gas emissions, and the air we breathe will be cleaner. These network systems are exceptionally efficient, so that it means that They will use less electricity and put less stress on the grid than any other approach to heating and cooling buildings. They can also have smaller demand peaks, which is a major driver of the cost of electricity, or gas for that matter. We can reduce energy burden, and we can also use this as a vehicle for community development. And by the way, building these systems will create a lot of jobs. There's more than one type of thermal energy network, and I'm just going to talk about one now. And so most of the networks that would be built would be consist of a underground shared thermal loop that circulates water at ground temperature. Each building on the loop will have its own water source heat pump that draws heat out of the loop in the winter, puts it into the buildings, and in the summer it's reversed. Takes heat out of the buildings and puts it into the thermal loop. Thermal energy is all around us, and we have tended to ignore it the way we once ignored the energy in sunlight and the energy in wind. There's also, so it's right under our feet when we walk on the ground, and it's in wastewater treatment plants and sewer mains and rivers and lakes. The equipment in buildings throw off a lot of heat, and that can be captured. I'm talking about computer centers and telecommunications equipment in office buildings, the refrigerators and freezers in grocery stores. And then there's data centers, ice rinks, bakeries, breweries, they all throw off heat that can be captured and shared in a thermal loop. People may ask, is this something new? Is this something untried? And the answer is definitely not. There are, in Connecticut alone, at least 109 commercial or institutional buildings. I'm not talking, these are unconnected to each other, but that use geothermal systems, which is essentially the same technology that would be used in shared thermal loops or thermal energy networks. Across the country, there are dozens of campuses, and I'm talking about college, hospital, business campuses, that use geothermal systems of one sort or another. There are some cities in the United States that already have thermal energy networks, and others are working to develop them. Our job in Connecticut is to take advantage of this proven technology and the thermal energy that's right there all around us, and deploy it, and deploy this new approach to heating and cooling buildings to our neighborhoods and business districts. Luckily, the legislature took a big step in this direction in last year in SB 4, which established a program called the Thermal Energy Network Grant and Loan Program. The purpose of this is to provide communities on a competitive basis funds to do feasibility studies that look at the potential for networks in their own communities. Massachusetts and Colorado both have established programs that do exactly this, provide funds for feasibility studies. Feasibility studies bring together stakeholders, they identify potential locations, they quantify demand, heating and cooling loads, and they're a crucial first step towards municipalities going and securing more funds. There's a problem though. The grant and loan program has not yet been funded, and that's what the legislature and governor need to do this year. We need to stop burning so much gas. We need to provide cooling to more schools and homes. We need to reduce the energy burden on people. So I invite you to help us get the Thermal Energy Network Grant and Loan Program funded this year. It's an investment we need to make now. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Peter. Next, we're going to move to Ricardo.
Good morning. So in Connecticut, we have what's called the Energize CT Initiative, to which Eversource is one of the proud sponsors of. We're also joined by our neighboring utility at Alban Grid, the Energy Efficiency Board, the overseer, and our colleagues at the Connecticut Green Bank. The Energize CT initiative is designed to empower our customers, our residents, our business owners to manage their energy smarter and make better choices. And we do that through the deployment of different energy efficiency and demand management incentive and rebate programs. It's a collaborative effort. Energy efficiency continues to be the most cost-effective investment that any business or homeowner can make. And while I could spend an hour talking about all the programs that we have available through the initiative, there are a few that stand out that I really want to talk about today, especially after being so fired up after this morning's introduction. The first one is the Home Energy Solutions program. This program is sort of the entry point for any residential homeowner that is thinking about lowering their bills and reducing the consumption. It's the entry point, and through this program, we have approved and certified technicians and contractors that actually come to your home and conduct an energy assessment. Think of it like getting a physical on your home. And via the assessments, can demonstrate to the customer how healthy or how unhealthy their home actually is from an energy perspective. And through this reports, also indicate the different energy conservation opportunities that are available and the different incentives and rebates that we can provide through the initiative to buy down the cost for those projects. Now, within the Home Energy Solutions program, these technicians on the spot can also do things like weatherization and air sealing and tons of improvement to the facility, to the home, and conduct services that can range upwards of $1,000 worth of services right there at a fractional cost to the homeowner. But we do understand that to lower the burden on cost, that there are certain customers that we qualify via their income eligibility status, and we can provide those assessments, those same assessments, those physicals at no cost, and provide the same level of service to those customers. So as a homeowner, you live in these communities, and one of the cornerstones of a community is also the small business community. A lot of those homeowners work in those small businesses. They use those small businesses. So another program that we're proud to represent and promote is the Small Business Energy Advantage program. This program, very similar to our Home Energy Solutions program, is a concierge type service where we have approved technicians, approved vendors that come to your business and conduct a no-cost, no-commitment energy assessment. And via this report, list out a slew of different energy conservation opportunities that your business can take advantage of. Now, one of the things that separates our small business programs from, I think, any other small business programs across the country is our ability to provide financing at 0% on bill for qualifying small business customers. We find that 90+% of all of our small business participants take advantage of this. It's our way of breaking down that barrier of initial cost, which especially for some of our smaller, what we call micro businesses, can be really burdensome. So, living in your home, you live in the community, you work in that community, but one of the other programs that I personally feel is of great importance is our education programs. We have one program in particular called the Green Sustainability and Technical Education Program. That's a mouthful. It's called the Green Step Program, and what this is an education workforce development program that's geared towards rising high school seniors. What better way than to train the next generation of workers in the clean energy workforce for Connecticut, which has been rising year after year to meet the rising demands within the state. Through this program, we offer certifications, workshops, on-site trainings in heating, ventilation, cooling, green building design, other green building trades, renewables. We even offer services to help with resumes and other workforce development and workforce training opportunities. So all these programs together, I feel, very synergistic and complement each other, and just proud to be able to, through the Energize CT initiative, deploy and implement these programs.
Thank you. And lastly, we will go to Bernie Pelletier.
Thank you very much. I'm going to divide my 5 minutes of fame into 2 topics. First, could I get a show of hands? How many of you have heard about balcony solar or plug-in solar? Woohoo! This is great. So that's my first topic today. Yep, we've got up a picture of balcony solar, literally somebody's balcony. Might be in the U.S., might be in Germany, but what is it? It basically is it's the little brother. So this big solar is represented by Mike Trahan. Plug-in solar is represented, its little brother. And it is essentially making an appliance out of solar, something that you can plug in to an outside outlet. Anyone with sun can participate, no incentives are needed. So just to go a speck deeper, I got a schematic of what it looks like. It's usually between 1 and 4 solar panels. In back of those solar panels is an inverter and a plug. The inverter basically takes a direct current out of those panels and turns it into alternating current so that our houses can use it. You see a picture of our house. And actually the grid plays not very much role at all in plug-in solar because you're hard to export any. Typically, you're just sort of run-of-the-mill things that are running all the time in your house are going to gobble up all that power. But you might say, well, if it's so small, is it worth the trip? And so this next sort of map of the U.S. shows that, I guess if you want to call it a bright side of us having higher electricity rates, is something even small like plug-in solar can save Connecticut residents between $400 and $800 on their electric bill. That's for a lot of people, that's a lot of money. So why are we bringing it up now in the summit? We really do have a legislative ask. We would like Connecticut to join the only other state in the U.S. that has plug-in solar. That's Utah. Not exactly a bastion of liberality, but they have a plug-in solar law there. The key tenets of such a piece of legislation would be the utilities are not going to have any liability because it's an appliance. It's not really anything to do with them. In turn, we residents are left out of or don't have to get an interconnection agreement, which is a difficult thing to get. And there will be product standards. As we sit in this room today, underwriters, laboratory are certifying products, safety standards, and size limitations. So this is something that we should all push. It's going to be a help. The little brother should help the big brother solar. We need all the solar that we can get, little or big. And for just a minute, I would like to add on to what Ricardo was saying. Switch now to talk about the conservation and load management plan. Introduce this concept. Charles is talking about wind. Mike is talking about solar. These are generating power. They're generating megawatts of power. The programs that Ricky was representing are reducing, they're conserving energy. So think of that as a megawatt. It's power that we don't need. Another thing they do, Ricky mentioned load management. So when the peak demand is up there, cost is high. If we're able to take that demand and either cut it off or move it to another point in the day, we can lower cost for everybody. And so what I would like you to take away from this is that megawatts really benefit everybody. And that maintaining these programs, which were under attack at least 3 times last year and will be under attack this year, we need to preserve these programs. They have benefits for everybody. I'm an example of somebody who's adopted them. I have R40 insulation in my attic thanks to this program. I've had a couple of these audits. They've been instrumental in making my house more efficient, more comfortable. My wife still complains, but we are more comfortable. But many of you haven't had the opportunity to take advantage of these programs. And you might say, great, Bernie, you got some benefit, but I haven't gotten any benefit. Well, you have gotten benefit. You have lower wholesale costs. You have more reliable grid because we're using less. We have lower peak costs, better air quality, better public health. Not that we don't have a lot of challenges, but it would be worse if we take away these programs. And the state has an active workforce and an active industry that benefits us economically all sorts of ways. So I'll just leave you with what the Hippocratical, the doctors, I would say to this legislative session, as we, February 4th, as we gather together, there'll be pressure to cut. We should think about this baby not going out with that bathwater. I think my time is up. I want to thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So my first question is going to be to Ricardo, but I'm also interested in hearing your thoughts on this, Bernie. In Connor's earlier slide, we saw that over about the last 10, 20 years in New England, our demand for electricity actually remained relatively flat. That was mostly attributed to the gains in energy efficiency. When we look to the future, that's no longer expected to be the case as we look at electrification, the rollout of electric vehicles, heat pumps, potentially large data centers. So with those changes coming on the horizon, how big a role is energy efficiency going to play, along with distributed energy? If you might want to explain what we mean by distributed energy a little bit, but how is that going to impact what we're dealing with the growing demand, and how will those resources ultimately impact the cost for customers to adopt those changes?
Well, I mean, I would say, someone that's been in the energy efficiency industry for, 2 decades, I would say it's never been more important than it is now. When we're looking at, Bernie mentioned the Conservation Load Management Plan, there are 3 main priorities that the plan focuses on. And the first one is decarbonization, so through energy efficiency, through demand reduction, but also through, lowering CO2 and greenhouse gas emissions, through things like, electrification, heat pump technologies, and getting off of liquid fuels is really important. But how do we balance all that? And even though, energy efficiency has been around for quite some time, sometimes, energy efficiency also gets sort of, I don't want to say forgotten, but sort of left behind with all the newer and exciting things going on, but it's still the most cost-effective thing a homeowner or a business owner can do. And it's still going to be the one thing that really sort of counterbalances everything that's going on with all the aggressive goals in Connecticut and in the region. The 2030 and 2050 GHG reduction goals. But energy efficiency is still going to be that main fuel, that first fuel, that we call it back in the office, that we can really focus on reducing. I was at a conference recently where it was talked about, the impacts of data centers in certain regions across the country. And we're a novel idea, energy efficiency. That should be the first thing that we should look at to take some stress off of the grid in those pockets. So that just, for me, just further emphasize why energy efficiency is still number 1, top of mind. And while we're going to continue to promote these programs and continue to be successful. I know Gordon, you wanted to a couple minutes.
Thanks. I certainly agree with what you put on the table there, Ricardo. And I would just add a couple things. All the trends that you outlined are making energy ever more precious. And so if you want to just think of our grid and our system as a bucket, we don't want a leaky bucket. We have a precious commodity, energy. We want to put it into a bucket where the energy gets used the way it was intended to be used. The fact that you noted, which is that our electricity consumption has actually gone down in recent years, that is true. It is because of these programs. It's also because heavy industry has left our state. The dark side of that is that you have to recapture the cost of the poles and wires over a decreasing base, which makes the rate itself, which is just a fraction cost divided by base to recover it, makes that rate higher. So it matters a lot how energy comes onto that system. If it comes on as a peak, that's going to strain the system. If it comes on sort of even, where we have a valley in the load in a given day, that can actually be what you want to call beneficial load and actually could help everybody lowering rates.
Can you talk about So we're talking about distributed energy. We're no longer relying just on a handful of large power plants in the state. You know, people have rooftop panels, even the patio panels that you were showing earlier. How is this growth of distributed energy, small sources of electricity throughout the state impacting the distribution and transmission loads and how that ends up on the customer's bill?
Go ahead. 30-second comment. Of course, yeah.
So the more solar we can put where the power gets used on site, the better off we are. And for a lot of reasons is that we take the stress off the electric grid. You know, our grid in Connecticut, you know, if you're following Energy Connecticut, it needs to be addressed, it needs to be upgraded. Those upgrade costs are very, very expensive. So the more small solar, when I say small solar, I mean including rooftop solar at the residential level, but I think we're probably talking a little bit more like projects that are, and here we go with the first acronym of the day. Can't believe we've done the hour in energy, haven't done one acronym, but DERs, you know, DERs, or distributed energy resources, are so important. So we need to find ways to get power used on site and delay, as long as we can, you know, significant upgrades to the grid, which are going to show up eventually on your electric bill.
I want to stick with you for a second, Mike. We actually have two questions from the audience that both relate to solar. One is, what is your position on a 50 megawatt limit on commercial solar? And the second is, what is the expansion of solar farms into critical open space areas like farm fields and core forest impacting our green spaces? Why not roofs and parking lot? And before I let you answer those questions, I just want to talk about this a little bit, because this is something you and I have spoken about and I've written a lot about. As we expand grid scale, both solar and now also with battery storage facilities in Connecticut, we're seeing increasing amount of conflicts with local communities, and a lot of those concerns raise environmental issues. So you've got a group of environmentalists in the room here today. What would you say to people who support the development of clean energy sources, but are so concerned about some of the environmental impacts?
Well, the company owners in Connecticut, you talk to them, they are environmentalists at heart. I mean, their business is to produce more on-site electric generation, which in the end benefits the environment. I mean, I have a position, it's probably not popular in the room, but there are some restrictions on allowing solar on some forest and farmland in Connecticut. There are farmland sections here that haven't been farmed in 50 years that farmers want to put solar on, but they can't do it for one reason or another because of some state regulations. I mean, in those instances, there should be opportunities for farmers to make some of their properties that they're not using any longer to put solar on it. And I'm talking about a 50 megawatt size project, but I'm talking about you know, maybe something in the neighborhood of 1 megawatt or half a megawatt, something that would give the farmer an extra line of revenue to make their business stay afloat, and also generate some local power for the neighborhood. As far as 50 megawatt projects, I mean, is there more than one in Connecticut? I'm not sure that there's more than one at this point. You know, if 50 megawatt project could be cited so that it doesn't have an adverse, you know, serious adverse effect on the environment, doesn't have an adverse effect on the local community, I wouldn't have any problem with it. No.
Do you find that some of those restrictions and the local pushback you've been getting in certain areas has slowed the development of commercial solar?
I think it probably has, but I think probably for the right reasons. I mean, if you're a homeowner and you've gotten used to seeing an open space across the street or down the road, or you pass it every day on your way to work and you enjoy seeing that, I mean, I can understand where you're probably irked that you see a sign on the property that coming soon, the 25 megawatt solar project. You know, that's probably doesn't make you very happy. But I mean, look, we're going to have to make a decision at some point in this state. I mean, do you want, you know, electric prices, you know, going through the roof? So it really makes life difficult for homeowners and business owners? Or do you want to think proactively and start to map out how we can allow more ground spaces, open fields, ground mount systems to be sited in the state? It's very expensive. We hear a lot, why don't you just do, you know, projects on undisturbed lands and parking lots? Parking lot canopy solar projects are very expensive to do. They cannot compete in the current state process. You don't win bids to put a ground-mounted canopy project. In the current process, we've tried to change that, and it hasn't worked very well. But we'd love to do more commercial projects. Commercial solar in Connecticut is capped. We're installing the same amount of commercial solar today as we did several years ago. It was the amount of solar commercial solar in Connecticut was doubled a couple of years ago, thanks to our leadership in the Energy Committee, but it's still capped. We've got a ways to go.
Next question's for Peter, and this is from the audience. How can geothermal work when there's so much ledge, especially under houses near the sound? And I also was wondering, luckily in Connecticut, we're not necessarily known for our volcanism. So when you're talking about geothermal, can you explain for people who might think Iceland or Wyoming, what you mean by geothermal energy here in the state?
Yeah, thanks, John, and whoever asked that question. Geothermal is a little bit of a confusing term because it's applied to more than one situation. So out in Colorado, their state energy office is funding feasibility studies for geothermal electric generation. So that's one kind of geothermal. It's called enhanced geothermal. And then there's, and then there are geothermal systems that are hybrid. There are some that are pulling heat out of the ground, some of it out of wastewater. There's just a variety of things. But you don't have to be Iceland. You don't have to be Iceland to pull a lot of heat out of 55-degree ground. So that's one thing. In terms of ledge, I've spoken to some of the geothermal companies. Somebody at Brightcore Energy, who's working on the New Haven Union Station project. He said ledge is not a problem. We drill through it all the time. The geology does matter. There are issues about sort of water flow and heat exchange. I know that in stores at the South Campus geothermal system, they hit like 20 feet of junk, in their words. That was hard to drill through. Ledge is not hard to drill through. It happens all the time. I think I've lost the thread of what the other parts of the question were.
The first question was with ledge, but we do have another one. Thermal energy is not being stopped by the federal government, so projects can proceed. Funding promised under House Bill 5004 didn't happen. What can we do this year? And maybe just talk a little bit about the New Haven Union Station project, because that did face some disruptions from the Trump administration.
Yes, it did. New Haven had secured, I think it was a $9 million grant from the Department of Energy. And when the Trump administration came to power, it stopped that. New Haven sued, I believe, and the money was restored. For reasons that I can't explain, the Trump administration has maintained the investment tax credit, which can provide 6 to 50% of the credit of the cost of a geothermal system, while at the same time it's eliminating that investment tax credit for solar and wind. Does that answer that question?
I think it does. My next question is for Charles. You had the helpful map up there earlier of all the projects that are currently under development along the East Coast. Given the Trump administration's treatment of Revolution Wind and some of those other projects, how quickly do you think the developers of these projects would be willing to come back and propose new developments in offshore U.S. waters, given a more sympathetic administration or Congress?
Oh, I think they're going to be very eager, to be perfectly honest. You saw the number of sites and projects that were working their way through the permitting process. The interest has been extremely robust, very healthy. Because under the Biden administration, permits were flowing relatively seamlessly through the process. It means that a lot of these developers have sunk a tremendous amount of time, energy, and cost into developing these sites. Right now, it's not just the offshore wind developers that are being frustrated by the Trump administration's guess you'd call it inconsistency. Unfortunately, it's pretty consistent, but sort of the back and forth and the amount of uncertainty that they're putting into the energy markets. You have the New England Generators Association, which runs a lot of fossil fuel plants here in New England, calling out the Trump administration for the games that they're playing with offshore wind because it creates uncertainty for the entire market. So right now, I think the administration is hurting energy development really of all types. People might balk and say, but it's opening up leases offshore. Remains to be seen how eager folks are going to be to exploit those in the current environment. So I think once we get through this madness, we have an administration that actually recognizes the economic and energy potential of these projects. These projects will start flowing. And the good news is, because many of them have well through the permitting phase, they can be brought online relatively quickly. Unlike some of the other projects that are also being bandied about, whether it's natural gas, not only very expensive, but you need to build pipelines, transport it, or new nuclear facilities, which, the last few years we've had just a terrible history with in terms of the cost of those projects, the delays in those projects, not because the administration is thwarting them, but just naturally inherent in the complexity of these projects. And even when you talk about the small modular reactors, we do not have any successful projects in the United States to date. It's going to be 20, maybe 30 years at a minimum before those projects can come online if we start pursuing them really vigorously. So, let's just close. Offshore wind really does present the best, quickest potential source of energy of any sort, never mind just clean energy in the region. And I think developers will be eager to continue their efforts once we have a more benign administration.
Another offshore wind question is, we've seen the cost of developing solar and onshore wind fall dramatically over the last decade or so. Unfortunately, there's still some technical challenges with offshore wind that keeps the price high relative to those other sources. Looking into the future, are there any technological developments or breakthroughs that you see as being on the horizon that could potentially lower the cost of some of those larger offshore projects?
Yeah, I would say that the difficulties are less technical than they are just practical in terms of the current economic situation that we find. We're finding supply chains and getting materials are becoming more expensive, not just for offshore wind components, but for natural gas power plant components as well. So we're in, we were a few years ago in a very inflationary period, and that was affecting development of all sorts. We also have some challenges when it comes to the specialized vessels that can help in the construction of these projects because of a thing called the Jones Act. Port-to-port transit of materials has to be on a U.S. flagged vessel as part of the supply chain, and more than 40 states involved in various elements of supporting the offshore industry here in the United States. There are vessels being constructed here in the United States which can do that job. They won't come online tomorrow, but they are in the pipeline. So I think folks are working on it, and hopefully we'll see those costs coming back down in the near term. Thank you.
We have another question for Ricardo. Can we lower the interest rates on the Energized CT program to help offset the loss of tax credits, especially for moderate and low-income families? I'm assuming the person here is referring to the tax credits under the so-called One Big Beautiful bill.
So the question is, can we lower the interest rates?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I will say this, and this isn't new to our programs, but, it sounds like an overused cliche, but we're constantly getting customer feedback on, as much as, us energy geeks, as much as we think we know everything, we want to make sure that we're hearing from customers what their problems are, what their needs truly are, and that barrier, upfront cost, continues to be, top of the list. So the fact that we can partner with different third-party financing institutions on designing more creative, more effective program models that can help us actually implement these programs. It's something that we're constantly looking at. So we have, one thing in particular, our teams, we can discuss, we can talk about it, we can talk about it with our energy efficiency board, our overseers on what we can do. One of the three main priorities that we have in our plan is affordability. What's good in having programs if they can't be designed to move the needle? And we know that, designing financing programs is crucial for that, for homeowners and our businesses.
And then we have a question, I think, Bernie, this is probably yours for you. On a positive note, what's one development that you saw in the year 2025 that gives you hope for the future of our climate and our environment? And we'll just move right to left and start with Charles.
Well, I'll stick to the offshore wind theme and the evidence that we still have an independent judiciary.
Well, I'll say two things. One is that in 2025, the legislature authorized a thermal energy network grant and loan program. They just need to finish the job and fund it. The second thing is that, as I understand it, EV car sales have continued. They're hitting some rough bumps, some rough spots, but the podcasts that I listen to say that there's a slew of new and improved and somewhat more affordable EVs coming in 2026. I think there's good things coming on that.
Last year, the state legislature passed Senate Bill 4. Part of that bill called for our PUC in Connecticut, PURA, to put out a report that would study the costs and benefits of the solar tariff programs in the state of Connecticut. That draft report is due out today. It may be out already, but when it does come out, it will provide the kind of ammunition that we need to push back against those who think that the solar programs cost more to consumers than they actually benefit them.
First, I have to tell you that it's really hard for me to be positive, so I wish you told me ahead of time that I was going to be positive. But seriously, I guess I take comfort. I look at the ISO New England graph of load every day. It's one of my sort of obsessions. And the prevalence of what's called duck curve days, which means in the middle of the day when the sun is shining and all these behind-the-meter programs are kicking out their megawatts and their kilowatts, it actually drives our New England load below the nighttime levels. And that's a duck curve day. And there's over 100 of those. You can look it up on the ISO New England site. And that does gladden the recesses of my stone cold heart.
Okay, I guess I'll wrap it up. I don't know if I'd call it a development, but I think I'd say, sort of a new trend that for me is very promising. I had the privilege of attending and speaking at several conferences across the country. Energy efficiency, demand management driven, and I'm often reminded through presentations and papers that the one thing that connects everyone it truly is communities. And historically, from a program design perspective, it's just been my entire career. We usually design programs program for you, program for you, program for you. But in reality, the change that we're seeing in the energy efficiency program design space is that we're designing programs with customers, with communities, hearing them, understanding what they truly need, and then seeing what we can do from a programmatic perspective to complement that. And to me, that is a very promising new trend in the energy efficiency program design space.
Thank you, and thank you to all our panelists.